It's still
Mhm.
a hypothetical candidacy. Will Boyd has been out there crisscrossing the state for months, galvanizing Democrats, getting Democratic support. I think that he has built a stronger connection with the base than Doug Jones currently has.
Couple of things that wanted to bring up just kind of to get to before we get to the bonehead, spend a little bit of time. One was the poll recently that came out, and I commented about this on Facebook. It's a Signal poll, so it's a Republican bias poll that was done about the governor's race, and it was really, I think the objective was pretty clear in my mind. You could see it from the very top of the poll when the line basically said, if Jones, and it weighed Doug Jones's chance against Tommy Tuberville, and the top line of the poll release, which it was almost like they were trying to show you how biased this was with the top line, because it said, if Jones makes another futile attempt to challenge Tuberville, he will lose in a blowout. Uh, look, and I know you have your guys is Will Boyd, and so, but aside from that, it just the problems I have with the poll itself
Mhm.
is number one. I think it's idiotic. I don't believe for a second that this is the true numbers. Number one, there was no data that was put out. There were no crosstabs. There was no anything to indicate what the questions were that they asked. Even more so, there was no indication of what the numbers actually meant, because there was a bar graph in there, and the bar graph had two numbers for each name. Tuberville's was 37%, and then 52 or 53%, something along those lines. Doug's was 27%, and then I don't know, 30 some odd percent, or whatever it was. And so there was no indication of what those two things were inside that bar graph. And I can only assume that the bottom number, or the smaller number, was strongly support or something along those lines. For sure, going to vote for this person. And I got to tell you, if that's the case, the guy who is supposedly going to walk into the governor's office, who all the other Republicans have run from, who has been campaigning now for a couple of months, has only got 37% strong support among Republican voters in a biased Republican poll. That's a tough deal. But more so, and this is what I kind of wanted to talk to you about, because I know we're going to disagree on this. And that is what I think is important in terms of Doug Jones running for governor. And my position is this: I like Will Boyd a lot. I think Will would be a fantastic person in pretty much any office, including governor. I think that in terms of the overall party, Doug's candidacy, Doug running and being the nominee from the party, is most important right now. And the reason I say that is, I don't know. I do think he has an opportunity to win. I think he has a better opportunity to win than Will Boyd does. But more so, I also think he has a better opportunity to raise more money. And I think he has a better opportunity to raise more money for himself, and to draw more attention to the full ticket, and to help the folks from the bottom of the ticket all the way to the top also raise more money, and to bring more visibility to the party. And that is my position.
Yeah. So let me start with the poll. The poll, I think, as you said, is dubious. I think it lacks context of, in terms of the analysis to go with the numbers. And of course, we all know that Signal is a Republican leaning entity. So there's that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the poll is dubious for that reason. However, I do think that the general idea that Tuberville would beat Doug Jones one-on-one, I think is accurate. And the reason I think it's accurate is we don't have any reason to believe that any Democrat going up against a Republican at this point, we don't have any prior history to base over the past 20 years that any Democrat running against a Republican statewide is going to cross a threshold that's going to be a winning threshold. So my
Well, we got
premise
one.
is that no, we don't actually, because What you're talking about, if you're talking about when Doug won against Roy Moore, as I've been saying, that was a real that was an anomaly. Lightning struck once, and it struck once for reasons that had nothing to do with Doug as a candidate and everything to do with Roy Moore as a candidate, and also with Richard Shelby blessing the Republicans to defect. So I would dispute that. But anyway, getting to the larger issue, moving beyond the poll and getting to the larger issue of the candidacy and the things you just said, I would argue that any Democrat running against Tommy Tuberville is going to have an uphill climb. But the reason I think that Will Boyd actually is a better candidate to run against Tuberville than Doug Jones is that one, Will has been doing something that Doug has not done, and that is he's been working. You know, we're still talking about a hypothetical candidacy, even though we all believe Doug is about to jump into the race any day now. It's still a hypothetical candidacy. Will Boyd has been out there crisscrossing the state for months, galvanizing Democrats, getting Democratic support. I think that he has built a stronger connection with the base than Doug Jones currently has. In addition to that, I think any Democrat that runs against Tuberville is going to be successful in raising money in and out of the state because Tuberville is so polarizing. I don't believe that Doug Jones has an inherent advantage in terms of fundraising because it's Tuberville. He, more than any Republican that could be credibly on the ballot, you know, certainly more than Will Ainsworth or Ledbetter or Merrill or anybody else you want to name. Nobody has been a lightning rod more than Tuberville, not just in the state, but nationally. So I think the money's going to come in if the candidate is smart. And if the candidate is well prepared, and I think Will is, and he's got some out of state connections that Doug Jones doesn't have, just as I'm sure Doug Jones has some out of state connections that Will doesn't have. But I think the fundraising thing is not going to be an issue at all. So that's where I stand on that.
Redirect, Your Honor. So I would say that I think that the flaws of Roy Moore that we recall from that race, and really it was almost a lost cause type narrative that was placed on Roy Moore at the end of that race, because I think people fail to remember how popular he was with the Republican Party and Republican voters, and the fact that he beat what many people thought, including all of the big mules in this state who backed him, a shoo-in for sure lifetime U.S. Senator from the state of Alabama in Luther Strange. Now, Luther Strange undone himself a bit with the whole Bentley episode and what took place there and being appointed early. That little scandal there caused him some issues, and people voted against that. But they voted for Roy Moore in a pretty astonishing number at that point. And he had, before they entered that race, there was a large swath of support for that guy. All right. And so now it was easy to come back and say, well, you know, Roy's very problematic because of X, Y, and Z, and because those folks that the business community had backed Luther Strange and not him. But what we're looking at here is essentially the same candidate in Tommy Tuberville. All right. Tommy doesn't have the shaded history of the women and that sort of thing that's come out. But there'll probably be some stories that are out there. There's one out there now about him actually not living in the state, and that's going to be a story as soon as he qualifies. Ken McFeeters, who is another Republican on the ballot, he's going to file a ballot challenge. And that thing is going to get headlines, and it's going to be played out. And then I'm assuming some other folks are going to file one in court, and that's going to go to court. And so this thing is going to be a very public, very nasty fight, because I know the attorneys who are working on it, and these are not no-named Democratic shills who are working on this thing. and they believe they're going to be able to prove that Tommy Tuberville doesn't live in this state. And so I think that regardless of how that comes to pass, it's still going to be a very ugly story for Tuberville, and something that's going to be drawing the attention to the fact that he doesn't live here. And he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't live in this state, and he hadn't. And so I think that's going to be a big problem for him. And it's going to be, I would say, of Roy Moore and the women type size for him. And so whoever is going to face him, I think is going to have that problem. And there's also the issue of the fact that, like Roy Moore, the business community, while on paper they're doing the same thing that they're doing, that they did with Roy Moore, behind the scenes, they're not supportive of Tommy Tuberville. Up until the very last moment, when they saw that they had no other options, they were actively searching for somebody to replace Will Ainsworth on that ballot and go against Tuberville in the Republican primary. And so I think he also has a problem with that. And so I think that there's a lot of people out there who are searching for a stable, serious candidate who they can privately, through their C4s and their this and that, can give some money to. And I think that's an issue that's out there. And I just think, I understand what you're saying about Tuberville being polarizing and that aiding Will in being able to raise money. I just don't think he has the same funding structures in place that Doug does, and I don't think he has the same ability to do it.
I think he does. It just hasn't been manifested yet. But that's a conversation that we'll have to have further down the line.
Sure.
In terms of the what you're talking about in terms of the potential for pushback from Republican voters, I don't think it's going to be there. Now, if Tuberville is removed from the race by the party, that's one thing. Or if he's disqualified some way legally, that's one thing. But I don't think Republican voters care really truly whether or not Coach, as they like to call him, lives in Alabama or not. Because I think if it really truly mattered, I don't think he would have been elected to the Senate in the first place.
I think
because that conversation was going on back when he was running for the Senate, and it didn't seem to affect him.
Not the same though. So, it wasn't the same. You know, Tuberville really benefited.
Even so, let me make my point. Even so, I don't think they care. I think the people that like Tuberville and that are MAGA, they are with Tuberville because he is undeniably, indisputably MAGA. And I think he's got those folks no matter whether he lives in here, whether he lives in Alabama or Timbuktu at this point. If he is the Republican nominee. Now, if he's not, then I think we got to have a different discussion. You know, that's a different discussion altogether. But assuming he's the Republican nominee, they don't care.
I disagree. I mean, first of all, I think you're right to a point. And I think that's reflected in the 30% or so of people in that poll. That's his support base. And it's whether or not he can get higher than that 35, 37%, and push him up to be able to defeat whoever's running against him. That to me is the difference here. He's going to have those people who are going to, excuse it however they excuse all the nonsense that Trump does all the time. But I think you've got, I do think though, just like you see with, let's take an issue like marijuana. Where we all know that marijuana is a far less harmful drug than alcohol. But you have a whole number of people who will swear up and down to you that it's evil and it's a problem and that it's awful simply because it's illegal right now. And I'm telling you, I think if you have a good solid campaign that focuses on the fact that this guy doesn't live here and that's illegal, then a lot of people are going to be turned off by that fact, that it's illegal. And I think that there are some moderates out there who are looking for a reason not to vote for Tommy Tuberville, and I think that they'll hold on to that. If somebody does a good job of making that case.
But if that's the case, that would apply no matter who the candidate is, whether it's
certainly
Doug Jones or Will Boyd.
Certainly it would. And to a degree, I do, because I do think that you then get into the issue of who they are more willing to vote for. And I think you then can fall back, if you're Doug Jones, on what he did in the Senate during his time in the Senate. And I think a lot of people in the business community and a lot of the more moderates in this state looked at what he did in the Senate during that time, and they're okay with it. They're okay with how he handled himself and how he conducted himself. The Tuberville thing, when Tuberville was elected, it was, I mean, the dude is such an opportunist, and he really felt he didn't do anything. I mean, really, he rode around, and the handful of actual appearances and questions that he answered was just a disaster. I mean, it was the three branches of government thing. It was making just ridiculous remarks about stuff that clearly showed he didn't have any idea what the job was.
Yeah.
But he had the sitting president lobbing bombs into the opposing camp when he was up against Jeff Sessions, and then we had the whole abortion issues, and we had everything else that was going on at the time, and that just propelled. He never had to do anything. He never really got vetted. He never really had any opposition research done into him extensively. He never really had an opposition campaign run against him, and I think that's going to be different if you have a well-funded, well-backed candidate in a race for governor. I think all of those things are going to be different for him, and I think that he's going to be in for a fight, and I don't know that he can do it.
And I don't disagree with you on any of that, other than that Doug Jones is the only one who has the potential to be that well-funded, well-backed candidate. I think Will Boyd does too. I think Will has some appeal to not just to. I'm gonna go ahead and put race on the table. I don't think he has appeal that's solely for black people. I've seen Will interact with a lot of white Democrats who really resonate with his energy, his messaging, and with his political persona, and I think even with his personal persona. So I think he's got the same capacity to build a strong, well-funded campaign. What he needs is the opportunity. Now, Doug Jones has been, sort of dangling this potential candidacy for months, not really campaigning, not really working for the people's vote, and that's fine. If that's his strategy, that's fine. But I'm just saying to you, I don't think that's going to advantage him in any way when it comes down to it. I think if he ends up getting into the race as we expect, he's going to find he's going to be in a very competitive race, based on what I've seen from Will over the past 6 months or so. And I don't think it's a given at all that Doug is going to win the Democratic primary. But if he does, and I've said this before, if he does, of course I'll support him. I don't want to see Tuberville in there. And I think Doug was a good U.S. senator, even though I don't know that I think his tenure, while I certainly, as a Democrat, as a progressive and liberal voting person, a lot of what he did appealed to me. I don't see that it made any real difference with these moderates that you're talking about when it came to the general election against Tuberville. That didn't seem to really make a difference because, again, you still had that same basic 60-40, approximately 60-40 breakdown in the vote total, percentage-wise. So to me, while his senatorial record made a difference to me, I don't think it really makes a difference. I don't think that's going to be the distinguishing factor when it comes to a general election. So, it works. It may work in a primary, maybe, in terms of helping him, but I don't think I think you got to have some other factors at play in the general election, and I'm not sure that Doug can pull those factors together.
Well, I think you're measuring it against two different things. I'm saying when you're choosing between which candidate is going to be more viable, I think that people look at what Doug did in the Senate, and they can say they can use that along with some of the other factors that to vote against Tuberville once they go into the voting booth and they're by themselves, and that's what I meant by that is the measuring stick for that.
But we've already gone down that road. That's what I'm saying. We've already been down that road, and it didn't happen.
That was for Senate. This is for governor.
Well,
And
I think it's the same difference because, again, I think people are voting. I don't think people are going to evaluate it any differently when it comes to God. In fact, they may. In fact, you could even argue that what he did in the Senate won't matter as much to people because it is a different position. But for sure, I think when people get into that, when they start looking at candidates They're not looking at, oh, well, he did this as a senator, and so this is going to influence me for governor. I think that's less a factor than who is this candidate and who is this candidate. And what's my leaning? What's my preference? What am I hearing from these candidates? Not, that previous tenure stuff. I don't know that that has as much impact as you think, but that's my opinion.
Right. I just think that nobody knows who Will is for the most part. I mean,
Well,
they've
there are a
seen
lot
him
of
around
people
on
who
the
know who he
ballot.
is.
I
He's
just
been,
think
he's
been
been
around on
he's
the ballot,
been
but he's not grown himself in the kind of traditional come up through various positions sort of way that typically happens.
no, that
He
is
started
true.
running for
That
office
that is true.
and
That is true.
has been has not that's been his
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. He hasn't come up in the traditional way, and I would argue that based on what I'm seeing when I'm with him when he's campaigning, I don't think that matters to people. I think what matters is that he's got the ideas that he talks about and presents, the positions that he presents, the personality and character that he presents is what they're resonating with.
I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but if Doug gets in this race, and it is a race it becomes almost immediately, it becomes Doug Jones versus Tommy Tuberville. Even though we have not gone, even we haven't got to qualifying yet. Qualifying's not till January. And so immediately, if he says I'm running, it becomes Doug Jones versus Tommy Tuberville. And that's the way it's approached from the outside. It's the way it's approached on the national networks. That's the way it's approached from pretty much everybody. And
Well,
I think that
I
that's
think
good for
the mainstream
everybody
media
down the ticket.
coverage, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good for down the ticket.
I think the mainstream media coverage, certainly, we've already seen that, and that's no big surprise. Of course, the mainstream media is going to do that because that's an easy narrative for the mainstream media, for a lot of reasons. But I think when it comes to the voters, we may see something different in the primaries, but we'll see. And
Yeah.
again, I think the bottom line is he gets in the race. He's still got to win the primary. There's not going to be a coronation. He's going to have a fight. And I think that's good. I think no matter who it is, whether it's Will Boyd or Doug Jones, whoever the Democratic nominee is, I think that person needs to have a fight in the primaries. That's what helps get you ready for the general election. So there's going to be a fight either way. There's not going to be a coronation, and nor should there be.
I just my point was saying that was I think the spectacle of that is a very important one for the party as a whole. That attention, I think, helps everyone raise money. It helps no matter what we can sit down and break down the numbers and everything else. But when that comes out or when that's put on the top line of everything, it makes it seem as though that there's a chance for people, and I think that's what is necessary for the party. I think it makes it seem as though there's some excitement in Alabama among the Democrats because let's be honest, also this fits into the national narrative of things you just had Democrats have these huge wins on like Tuesday, a couple of Tuesdays ago. The president is very unpopular. The Republicans are going to lose a bunch of seats. They're out here trying to gerrymander the hell out of everything. And so now even in Alabama, you've got a fight for the governor's office that could go down to the wire. You know what I'm saying? And that's the national narrative.
And I think that exact same national narrative can be created if it's a Will Boyd, Tommy Tuberville, contest, to November. I think the exact same narrative. In fact, I think it may even be more pronounced because of some of the more obvious differences between the two of them. So, you got a historic opportunity to elect not only a much younger man, but also an African American in a state where African Americans and their history and their culture is under attack. I think there's the ability to create a viable political narrative, cultural narrative exists with either one for different reasons. Whether you're talking about Will Boyd or Doug Jones, I think that still is there. So I don't see how I don't see in any way, shape, or form that's less true for Will than it would be for Doug.
I mean, it could happen with Will, sure, but it's going to happen with Doug. I mean, it's going to happen immediately with Doug.
Well,
That's my point.
I don't know why you assume that it's a could for Doug, that it's a will for Doug and a could
Because
possibly
it's
for
going to
Will.
happen immediately as soon as Doug gets in this race. It's going to be this extension of the national narrative, and it's going to be Doug Jones versus Tommy Tuberville, and that's going to be what is the top line of every story about the governor's race from here
And
until even going into the primaries and stuff, and that's what's
and
going to
the
drive fundraising and everything else.
and
That's what I'm saying.
I think the next sentence is, in many media outlets, the next sentence is going to be, and he already lost to Tuberville by 60 to 40 percentage wise. So I mean, I don't see that as being an inherent advantage in the primary. I think it's a little early to think about all that, but I don't see I think that narrative easily goes in a different direction.
I mean, I just think that it's in the climate that we're in, that's what becomes the narrative, the overall narrative of this,
And
and I think
I
that
don't see that as inherently advantageous for Doug. That's what I'm saying.
the narrative of it just being him versus Tuberville.
Right, because he already lost to Tuberville. He lost to Tuberville in a senatorial race, so I don't see that as an inherent advantage. Again, you're looking at this from the standpoint of the positions that they're running from, and I'm saying I think people are looking at personalities. They're looking at the political character and personality of these people, not what office they're running for. And the reality is they had a face-off and Doug lost the face-off. That's already happened. That's a part of history.
Yeah, in a different climate, in a different time, for a different office. I mean, I just think that it's.
I don't think it's that different.
What
I
I'm
don't
saying
think it
is I
matters.
don't think that's the nuance of this is going to be much of a factor. I think the overall focus of this of what's going to shape this is as soon as it comes out, as soon as he hits the qualifying button on this, it switches. It changes everything to Jones versus Tuberville. And I mean, that's the reason
again,
why there's
in terms
polling
of
coming out.
in terms of the media coverage, yeah, because that's
Yes,
what the mainstream media is going to do.
and that's going to
But I'm
drive
saying
everything else.
the mainstream media, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that it's going to drive everything in terms of the voting. There's still a primary to go through. It's not going to be a coronation, nor should it be a coronation. So I disagree that that's an inherent advantage. I mean, it gives him something, but I don't think it gives him everything, and I don't think it gives him a lock, nor do I think that even advantages him in the general election. And that's really what we ought to be talking about. Does that advantage him in the general election? And I don't think it does.
I mean, I think the fundraising advantage comes through with that. But again, my overall point and where we started is no matter who's because I think we do agree that it's going to be an uphill battle for either one of them against
Yep.
Tuberville or any other Republican that's in there. It's going to be because of
Yep.
the straight party voting and all that goes in the state, and that's the reason. That's what leads to a lot of the 60-40 is just so many people go in and hit the straight party ticket on this thing, But I do think that when you have that sort of spectacle and that sort of attention, true or not, it doesn't matter because perception is reality for a lot of folks. I think that spectacle of Jones versus Tuberville again helps drive fundraising up and down the ballot, and I think it helps. To have him at the top of the ticket.
Yeah, and I don't agree. I don't
Okay.
agree. I don't think it. I think the same narrative can be created and the same advantage in terms of fundraising or the same benefits can be derived from a Will Boyd candidacy as well. It's just it'll be approached differently, it'll be developed differently, but I think you can have the same result.
I'll tell you this. This was going to be our short topic for the final segment. because we still have to do the Bonehead, so we probably do need to get to that. So, all right, look, our Bonehead is Les Barnett. He's the commissioner of the Alabama Educational Television Commission. He's one of the commissioners on that, and this kind of gets us into the other topic that was going to be our long topic. Discussion for the day. Maybe we've blown that out of the water. But listen, hey, that was good. I mean, if everybody likes a good disagreement on things, a good cordial disagreement. David and I are still friends. We're still gonna walk away from this thing enjoying each other. But
absolutely. Look, you're still my favorite columnist. No question.
You're still my favorite co-host. And so listen. But Les Barnett is a crazy person. He said a couple weeks ago that he's all right. Let me just set this whole thing up better. What's been taking place over the course of the last few months, ever since Trump had started his attack on the public broadcasting service and PBS and on every institution, trying to inject partisan politics into pretty much every entity that's out there that's under public control, is he defunded PBS, and really because he's angry that they kept reporting the truth about things and that he couldn't manipulate them and control them. And so that has thusly affected the money that PBS and I can't remember the name of the foundation that basically goes into public broadcasting that provides funding.
Oh, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting? Is that what you're thinking of?
I was almost there. I can't remember this foundation for public broadcasting. You mean the Corporation for Public Broadcasting? Yeah, that one. And so they provide some money to some of these states, like Alabama, who runs Alabama Public Television, and it goes into a different foundation here, and it funds some of APT, and APT uses PBS's programming, and that's where we have all learned, our ABCs and our counting through the count to grow up on. This is, Big Bird and Elmo and Daniel Tiger and Molly from Denali. And, we watched this. And, when my daughter was little around here and loved those shows, they were fantastic programs. And so, they wanted to do away with this because it was liberal. And it injected liberal ideas such as treating people, even if they're gay, with respect and dignity and not freaking out. And apparently there was an Arthur episode in which there was a gay wedding, and there were some gay characters on another show at one point, and it wasn't like an in your face sort of thing. It was just hey, this happens in life, so here is this situation. God forbid that y'all have a slightly difficult conversation with your children one day, and explain to them that, hey, men love men and women love women, and we don't judge anybody. We just are happy for them that they're happy, which is the exact words we've told our daughter. Exact words that my wife and I have told our daughter. We're not judging them. Sometimes men love men, women love women. And if they're happy and nobody's getting hurt and they're not breaking any laws, then you know what? We're happy for them because they're happy. And if people can be happy, then the life is hard, and so we're happy for them. But that's too much. It's too much for the conservatives, and we got to get back to doing other things, and getting this country back on track, and that means, injecting religious themes into stuff about the founding of America, which was something that they attempted after the takeover of APT and the Public Television Board. And so anyways, in all this, they were going to kill off PBS programming from APT.
Right.
A couple of the commissioners have been pushing to do that. Even Governor Ivey got involved, with the lightest touch that you will ever see, and was like, may you please maybe just consider not doing that? And so this week they voted to go ahead and continue paying the contract for PBS, and keep it on the air at least until July. And they also voted down a proposal by Les Barnett, our Bonehead, starting the 180-day notification period, which would have ended that contract, which tells you that they're probably going to renew it in July as well.
So two quick things. One, the so-called religious context for the formation of our country is something that is not There's no uniform opinion on that. And in fact, there's historical reasons to dispute a lot of what is asserted about that. Secondly, Governor Ivey, she didn't come in, playing a trump card. And I don't mean that in the Donald Trump sense. I'm not trying to be euphemistic. I mean,
Sure.
in that sense, I'm talking about Trump as in what you see with card games. She didn't come down with a real strong divisive or decisive rather position. But what she did do that I really appreciate is she injected some reason and moderation into this process. And I appreciate that letter that she wrote for that reason. And I think that is the reason why we still have right now this connection with PBS that we were probably going to lose had she not gotten in the way she did. She walked a tightrope because of her political
Yeah.
and ideological affiliations, and I get that, but I think it was deftly done, and I actually appreciate what she did.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know. I'll say I think it helped. It certainly helped, and it gave a couple of people some cover. I think
Mhm.
they were still going to vote this way regardless, and I think that the idea of doing away with this was extremely unpopular with a
Mm.
wide swath of people, not just
Mhm.
liberals or Democrats, but a lot of the conservative people, school teachers, school administrators, religious leaders. I think a lot of people got on board with this and said, listen, this is not something that we want to do. In addition to that, I also think that they took a look at the economics of this thing and saw how poor the economic outlook was if they did this, because they were going to lose a ton of donations and a ton of memberships
Mhm.
from this. And not to mention the fact that the viewership was going to be cut probably by, I heard somebody estimate that the viewership of this, if they did away with PBS programming, would be cut almost immediately by as much as 70%, because they were going to
Mm.
lose all of the schools that participate in this, or that watch it and use the programming. There's a lot of daycares, a lot of
Right.
folks out there who do this. And, you know, I'll say this too. I love PBS. I love what they do. There are a couple of programs that I watch all the time. Antiques Roadshow. I don't know why. I can't stop. I can't stop. It's my wife laughs at me, it's so great for me to watch these people who have lugged a 1,700-pound piece of furniture into an arena somewhere in Delaware and are like, oh, I'm so surprised. I had no idea it was valuable. Oh, of course you knew it was valuable. Why did you take it? But I love that. The Ken Burns stuff. And by the way, I
Mhm.
am an episode into the American Revolution that he just released. It is fantastic, fantastic. And David is 100% right about the religious aspect of this thing. You're going to be shocked by this about land and money. Oh, much more so than it was about religion. And
Mm.
so it was a bunch of white dudes wanting their land and money. That's why they were all angry at one another. PBS is a fantastic resource. It has raised so many kids. It has helped so many kids. It has helped so many families. It has helped so many schools. The objective of it has, from Mr. Rogers to Big Bird to all of the other shows that are on, has been kindness and empathy and treating each other with dignity and respect, and learning about each other, and learning about other cultures, and learning things that you just don't know, and how much the value of education is. And I can't express to you how important it is that we keep this. And it just, we've supported it in our house for a long time, and I hope it continues on. And if it doesn't continue with APT, which will be a travesty, then I hope we can figure out a way to keep it going into classrooms and into homes around this state, because it is desperately needed around here, desperately needed. And I don't say that as a liberal. I don't consider anything that's on there liberal or conservative. I don't. It's just there. It's just
Yeah.
facts and education and entertainment, and it's not. I don't understand why everything has to be one or the other now,
Mhm.
and it just and how empathy has become just a liberal idea, and you're fighting against it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, in fact, arguably, what's ironic I won't say arguably, what's ironic is that empathy is actually supposed to be a Christian idea,
Yeah, right.
an idea embraced by Christians, and a lot of these right-wing Christians seem to have lost sight of that. And it's us left-wing Christians that are reminding them, hey, Jesus was empathetic,
Yeah,
and what he espoused was empathy. Hello, you forgotten that?
yeah, yeah, right. It's I don't know. All right. All righty. Hey, listen, we're off next week. So y'all have
Hmm.
yourselves a happy Thanksgiving. Be safe
Yeah.
with the travels out there. Until when we meet again, y'all be careful.
Peace.